Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lori Nelson. I'm the Executive Director for SheHeroes, and we're absolutely delighted to have you with us here today to meet with our new Meet Your SheHero, AsherJay. Asher is a creative conservationist, and she's an artist, a designer. There's hardly anything that she doesn't do, but she travels around the world saving the world. So we're so excited to have her with us today. But first, before I introduce Asher, Sophia, our board chairman, would you like to say a few words to our group?
Yeah, I want to welcome you all to our SheHeroes event featuring AsherJay, but I'm here to tell you about a little background about SheHeroes. So SheHeroes was invented by my sorority sister at MIT, co-founded by 3 MIT alumna, so that means women alumni of MIT, 2 of us in the same sorority. And the whole reason it was started was we want, when people Google Nat Geo influencer or amazing artist, that they see a video of a woman that's passionate, exciting, sharing her experiences. And the whole point is to show young people age 3rd grade to 8th grade that women can be whatever we want to be as long as we work hard towards that goal. And that a lot of us have overcome obstacles to get where we are, but we're here to support you. And that for young men and women to see that that is possible, so that young men as well can see that you will be their CEO, you will be their manager, or at the very least, you will be their coworker and their equal. So we welcome people of all genders to join and watch, and people of all ages, but we target 3rd to 8th grade before the young people trim their tree of possibilities, to keep your minds open and to make sure there's so many opportunities for you.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. So, Asher, I would love to say hello to you and introduce you to our group. Hello there.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here this Sunday, and thank you for tuning in.
I think we have a lot of young people on this call. So what we'd like to do is just jump right into the beginning of things. And just for our audience, I actually have been following Asher for years. We're both members of the Explorers Club, and her artwork is just astounding. And I think she's one of the most amazing people I've ever met. So I'm very biased for Asher, but she also has a completely amazing life story. So I want to get right to the bottom of things. How did you get started in art? What were you like as a child? How did this whole thing begin? Take us back.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was much younger, I had this early sensitivity to nature, wildlife, and animals. It started out with just being encouraged by my mother to bring back anything that fell out of a tree. So if it was a wounded bird, a chipmunk, a hedgehog, we had a menagerie at home. And the funny thing was, my father actually hated animals. So he really wasn't a fan of the fact that there would be a new sound or a call inside the house every day. And we would just be like, oh, that's just the dog. It's learned to make a new sound, and we taught it a new call today. But really it was a whole different species running around in the house. And so I grew up in a very rich environment where I was supported by my mother to really connect with nature and to see it rehabilitate, to see it being reintroduced back into the wild once its broken wing had been amended, or its broken foot had been fixed and it was back in the wild where it belonged, and you could see it being alive again and in its original context. That was kind of what took me further into the path of volunteering my services. So as a kid, I did a lot of volunteer work. I worked with the local adoption shelters to ensure that pets got adopted, doing those adopt-a-thons and organizing those kind of community events around foster pets and foster animals getting homes, permanent homes. Then we also did things we had turtle walks, which was, you could walk along the coastline and look for sea turtle nests and relocate them to hatcheries and then get them reintroduced to the wild 4 months later, 5 months later. And nothing is more of a privilege than seeing a whole clutch of hatchlings coming out to the surface and then, you know, scampering into the ocean. The problem is that like a lot of these coastal towns actually have street lights. So streetlight pollution takes the turtles that usually follow the moonlight and go into the ocean, start looking at the street light and coming into the roadways. And then they get run over or eaten by, you know, dogs or like picked off by other birds like seabirds. And so majority of them don't actually make it to adulthood or even back into the ocean at the very outset. So that was one of the reasons why I was part of the volunteer program for hatcheries. So as a kid, I was always very actively engaged in local initiatives. I was very passionate about nature, cared a lot about being hands-on and involved in any effort that happened. So I always looked out for opportunities where I could go for short study periods or camping trips or any kind of programs that were run. So I highly encourage all of you, doesn't matter how young you are, you know, just keep an eye out for interesting opportunities that are happening in your backyard, organized by local community leaders that would allow you to have a real-time engagement with whatever it is that you're most passionate about. The other aspect of it is that I've always been a person to try everything before I say no. So, you know, my mom threw me into 1,000 different activities as a kid. I learned like 5 different instruments. I was playing chess professionally. I used to horse ride. I did everything. I literally, my mom threw me in everything. So there was a way for me to, you know, not be badly behaved or get into trouble. So that way she would just keep me occupied at all time doing something or the other. I played tennis. I used to do triathlon meets in the weekends. So I was just always busy. And I really enjoyed that because you get to meet so many different types of people when you're doing different types of activities. And over time, you get to learn through trying what it is that you really care about, what you find the most amount of enjoyment doing, what you feel passionate about, what is something that you're just good at doing, but may not be what you actually care to do. So like I was good at doing a lot of things as a kid, but didn't mean that's what I wanted to be doing. Just because I was good at it doesn't mean that's my passion. So you learn those differences, which is very critical to pursuing what you're actually both passionate about and good at doing. And then that's what you end up doing with your time. And so, you know, when you're young, I think just try everything because life's too short. Like it's amazing. You know, you start out, you're in your 3rd grade. And I remember like being the 3rd grader and now like so much time has gone by so quickly and I'm here doing completely different things. But like, I'm so glad I captured all those moments along the way and threw myself into every possible activity out there so that I didn't lose moments of my time at the age that I was to do as much as I could in that timeline, right? So like, even when you're young, you can still be on magazine front covers, because I was, for organizing a local shelter event. So you can always be a community leader and show stewardship and be known for what you're passionate about from a very young age. And then when I did what was told to me to some extent as well, because my parents were like, you know, you're really passionate about animals, then you should probably study science. So like stay in the sciences. And so I did biochemistry and environmental science, physics, and stayed within that field as opposed to going into business. If I think back now, I think I might have really enjoyed business studies. So I'm kind of bummed that I didn't do them, but it doesn't matter because you can learn what you don't know on your own time as well. So like you can always be learning and growing as a person, even if you're not in school anymore. And so I did science. And then when I graduated, I had a choice between going into more into the scientific field or going into university and pursuing the arts. And because I was so, at that point I was trying to also I was also modeling. And so I wound up doing a lot of fashion related assignments, like going on the catwalk and doing modeling assignments and things like that, because I was really tall. And so I thought, okay, maybe I should study fashion designing because I hated being a model, but I thought I could be good at being a designer because at least that's more productive. You're contributing to society in some way. And so I started working in the fashion industry, interning as a university student. And I enjoyed parts of design because design, the cool thing about studying design is that then you begin to see the whole world as problems and solutions, right? So anything can be a well-articulated question that is a problem set, and you can discover a solution that corresponds to it. And utilizing that solution set, you're giving rise to something that has both form and function reconciled with one another. And that's a phenomenal thing to see something that you've created come into existence that also serves a purpose. And so design thinking is very different from being an artist. An artist can create something just for the sake of creating, and there is a lot of joy in just creating material, creating content. You can be writing, you can be drawing, you can do anything as a creative person. But as a designer, it's very function and application driven. So whatever you create as a designer has a reason to exist, and it actually benefits the people who use that thing that you've created. And so that changed my mentality a lot, because in design school I learned that everything could actually serve a greater purpose than just being there for its own sake. So then you think through things, you know, like for instance, when I create a painting, I think about the footprint of the painting itself. Like, what kind of paint am I using? If I wash the paintbrush in the sink, what kind of stuff is going off the paintbrush into the drain and into the local water system because of my painting? So you start thinking through the materials you use. You start thinking through why you do what you do, and if it has more benefit or has more cost. And if it costs more to the environment, to the world, then don't do that. You know, find a better solution, find a better way of expressing yourself, being creative. And so my design education really changed the way I connect to the world and how I show up in my abilities on a daily basis. And then moving forward, I, you know, realized I was passionate about design, but I wasn't passionate about fashion, because fashion was very waste oriented, because it's all about seasonal relevance, right? So like this season, these clothes are great, but next season it's no longer valid, and therefore people want to dispose of it and get a whole new wardrobe. And that seasonal obsolescence is what drives forward the consumption pattern in fashion industry. And so I thought, okay, fashion's not really my thing, because I'm just going to end up creating a lot of waste in the world. And so I was like, what can I do that would be more relevant for what I care about? And that's when the BP.
Can I interrupt for a second? Where did you go to school? And also, not to divert you, but where did you go to school, and were you also artistic as a kid? And what were you doing in that sense too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I studied at Parsons School of Design for University in New York City. It's one of the best like design schools out there. It's a private school, so it's expensive tuition, but like you can get scholarships, which I did. And there's also just the difference between real design oriented thinking, because the amount of workload they give you is to make you break out of the pattern of thinking in labels, right? So a design school that's really, really good will make you not see a chair as a chair, but as an object that occupies the negative space around your body, right? So then you're no longer thinking of it as a chair, you're thinking of as an object that fills a space around your body. So a chair does not need to look like four legs and a seat anymore. It can be whatever contours to your body type and around your body and occupies that negative space around your form. And so you start looking at the world differently when you look through the design filter versus when you look at it from just what has previously existed. So they make you challenge the whole world and turn everything on its head and question everything that you see, because it need not be the way it is at all, right? So a table need not look like a table the way it does today. And the person who sees that and gets it is the one who changes what a table is going forward. Yeah. And so that's what you end up becoming, is the person who questions the world and wants to upend it and see everything differently. Schooling, I did it between England and in India. I went to international schools. They were both British schools, and they were both liberal, very like progressive. We didn't even have grades. we were given like smiley faces for like getting through each grade. And I even got, but I mean, I'm not the role model student. So just a heads up, like I was very smart. So, you know, smart in the sense like a smart aleck, like a smart ass sometimes. So like basically what I would do is like look at the school handbook, and they would have stupid philosophies or rules in it, and I would challenge it. So I got like kicked out of school a lot because I would challenge a lot of the rules. But, you know, it's okay to be a rule breaker if you know why you're doing it and what you're doing it for. And I always asked the right questions. They just didn't have the right answers for me. So I got away with a lot of like naughty things as a kid, you know, like one of the rules my school had was that you could be late for school 4 days. If you're late for school 4 days in a row, then the fifth day you get sent home. So I was like, well, that's just a long weekend. So I would just come late 4 days and then get sent home the fifth day. And like the principal took like a month to realize that I was going home for long weekends every weekend. And so my punishment was to stay in school for the 5th day, but like be excused from interacting with any other student, you know? So they would just come up with ways to like deal with me, but I would always outsmart them. But like the thing I realized with that is that my personality type is to challenge how things are. And I don't accept things just because they are the way they are, because the minute you take it lying down, it's like you're not applying yourself. You're not questioning if the system actually works. And most of the time it doesn't. Like adults don't know better. People don't know everything. And they just act like they do. So never be afraid to speak out I mean, it's not about creating trouble for no reason. It's about being smart enough to question what isn't working and being able to be honest about that. So I always encourage people to think for themselves and be honest and hold people accountable for what isn't working.
On that note, though, we do have, by the way, everyone, on the side of your screen, you'll see the chat bar, and I should have probably mentioned this earlier, but we'd love to get your questions for Asher, so you can just type them in on the side, and then I'll ask, and one has just come in, Asher.
Yeah, I know. So who's your favorite professor?
Oh, okay, we're looking at it.
So my favorite professor in university was actually this English teacher who was in charge of two-dimensional drawing. And in one of the classes, at that point I had, so, you know, this is one thing I'll tell you as well. As an artist, I'm not very good at seeing depth and dimension in the way that the average person does. So the way you might see and draw a banana is not how I would draw a banana, because for me, the way I see spatial planes is like piece by piece. Like I have to put all these fragments together to compose depth. So I see them little by little. I don't see depth at one continuous stream. And so for me, when I used to draw bananas, they would just like fly through space. You know, they wouldn't be on a table. They wouldn't be in a bowl. They would just be like flying around on a page. And I realized at that point, I had an issue with depth. I couldn't see depth properly. I walk into film all the time, okay? And so I remember, you know, at that point, I realized like when I started doing my art campaigns, if you look at my visuals, and I'll walk you through some of my images, you'll see all of my images are mostly flat. They're like two-dimensional flat drawings that are silhouette oriented. And the reason I just started doing that is because I really can't see depth. And so I was like, I'm going to tap into my shortcoming and use it to my benefit and make that my style. Like, so even though I can't see depth, I can use it for the right reasons, right? So flat design, yeah, like Sophia Yen says, like, you know, flat design is hot right now and everybody wants it to be minimalist. So now people are like, oh, that's your postmodernist style. It's so minimalist. It's very graphically clean. But that's just, I can't see depth. I can't see the banana in a bowl. I can see it flying through space. That's just how I'm oriented. So I always tell people, you know, even if you're not the best artist, even if you're not able to do what somebody else is doing way better than you, you might still have a way to see and solve for the world that they can't do, even though they can see the depth, even though they can see the banana in the bowl. That girl's not the one who's creating the campaigns I'm creating, right? So like every person has a unique way of seeing and processing information in this world, and the way you do it could come to benefit, you know, and contribute in a way that no one else can. So just be you and take ownership and try to use even your shortcomings, even where you fail forward, use that to your advantage, see how that can come to play the right role in your life. So, I mean, I never think of anything as something I can't do. I just find a way around it and make it happen anyway.
Well, also on this note, I mean, you sound like you're a bit of a rebel, but I think I read somewhere that you had run away from home, like you were an independent teenager at a very early age. What was that story?
I actually didn't run away from home. What happened was that my mother got really annoyed with me because I was I'm like, when you're a smart kid, you have a lot of questions and you're always reading and you always want to know how everything works and why everything is the way it is. And you're always full of like conversation, right? My mom didn't want me to wake up every morning and pester her while she's trying to make breakfast for me, like, talk, like, but why, but why, but why? And she's like, oh my God, I can't deal with this kid. So she gave me my own apartment, which is very, very unconventional. But like at 12 years of age onwards, I was living in my own apartment alone. So I learned to like cook and clean for myself when I was 13. I knew how to take care of my laundry. I knew how to like take care of a whole house by the time I was 12, 13, 14. It's a bit abnormal, but that's just my family being kooky. You know, they're just not cut from the normal cloth. And I'm going to try and pull up the slideshow in the meantime as well. But you can continue asking me questions while I do so.
Yeah, well, you know, you're so passionate about saving wildlife and poaching and ocean conservation and all of those things. How did you launch your advocacy role, or your, you know, how did your independent spirit go down this path once you got out of school? Was it a gradual thing, or was it a decision that you made?
I think it happened organically, because when like right after I finished graduating from fashion, I was working on 7th Avenue, but then the BP oil spill happened in the Gulf in the US, right? And so I saw how it affected all these communities along the coast, and I was reading the articles daily and watching the C-SPAN feed, where it was talking about 20,000 dolphins dying because of the oil spill, like super pods of dolphins being affected, not being able to breathe. And that really broke my heart. And I've always been very emotionally affected by nature getting destroyed. So I used to cry a lot as a kid. And so when the BP oil spill has started happening, I was crying all the time. And my friends were like, oh my God, are you still crying about the stupid dolphins? But for me, it was not stupid, right? Like, I really cared about the dolphins. Like, for me, that was not stupid at all. It mattered a lot to me. So like, once again, you know, people will think differently, but you have to be able to stand up for what matters to you. And so for me, I was like, yeah, you know what? The stupid dolphins matter to me. I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. and find answers. And so I took a train to D.C. to talk to people and try to find a way to solve for what was happening in my backyard. And it felt like it was my problem. It was my responsibility to find a solution. Because the thing is, see, you can go through your whole life looking around you, thinking that somebody else is going to do the thing that you're looking at, right? Like, you're like, oh, somebody threw something outside the trash can, somebody else will pick it up. No. If you see it being thrown outside of the trash can, you go pick it up, because you're seeing it right then and there. You're seeing it happen. And so you can show stewardship, you can show ownership, you can show responsibility in that moment in time. And I think the more I saw happening in the world around me, and I thought by the time I grew up, you know, by the time I was in university, that we wouldn't be using oil anymore, that we wouldn't be spilling oil in somebody's backyard and not be bothered that animals are dying from it. I thought somebody would have sorted that out. Nobody had. And I was like, that somebody has to be you. Like, I need to get up and do something about it, because no one else is doing anything about it. And so the minute I started, you know, chasing people down, like, I have no inhibitions. Like, I'm not shy when it comes to what I care about. So in Washington, D.C., when all these experts who would give talks at these forums and were like talking to the congressional people and everything, like, we're at the at Capitol Hill, speaking to Congress, like, they would do the debriefs, you know, from toxicology reports to like some marine scientists talking about what was happening to the ecology in that ecosystem. They would give their address, and when they're coming out to take a taxi to the airport, I would just run after them and jump into the taxi with them and be like, I'm not crazy, I just need to talk to you for 5 minutes. And like, I would just start talking to them, and they were like, oh my God, like, you know, people get inspired when they see people with passion. Like, they loved that I cared so much, that it mattered so much to me that I had to talk to these people. So everybody took time to talk to me. They would make appointments with me. They would give me their phone number. So I was having a Rolodex, like a networking book, a black book with all the top phone numbers within the first week, because I just ran after them, you know, and I didn't take no for an answer. They were like, we can't talk right now. I'm like, oh, that's okay. I just need your email and I'll follow up with you, you know? So like, always make the effort to get the foothold that you need to move your story forward, because it's up to you to make that happen for you. No one else is going to facilitate that. So I'm very proactive, and I highly recommend people being proactive.
Well, we have a few more questions. I know you're trying to find your slides, because I would love everybody to be able to.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Zoe would like to know, what kind of animals do you help?
So I help every kind of animal. It depends on which nonprofit organization approaches me, or which corporation I'm working with, and what they're focused on. So I've worked a lot with elephants, because I did extensive work on the ivory trade and combating illicit ivory trade, which is like the movement of ivory that's procured from living animals by poaching them and then moving that ivory contraband across borders, usually to sell to a market, which is in China. And so I did a lot of campaigning against that. I did work on rhino horn. So mostly I've done wildlife trafficking has been my major focus, which is to do with any kind of animal, bird, or insect that is being exploited and moved across borders for some reason or the other. It could be for traditional medicine. It could be because they're illegal pets. It could be because they're being traded for either their bone or their skin or their fur or something, right? So it's like there's always a reason why an animal is being taken out of being in the wild areas that it belongs in and being shipped across borders for some human purpose that is exploitative. So that's where I intervene and I try to raise awareness. And that's where my art has mostly focused.
So when you became this activist, was that when the expressing yourself through art for activism arrived? Was this the oil spill?
Yeah.
Was that the moment that everything changed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it changed because I felt really called to making a change in the way that people saw information, because like people, when you give them data, you can say words, but the words don't actually mean anything until you can see it in some way or feel it in some way. And we're very visual creatures because we have forward facing eyes, we're predatory beings and we're very visually focused beings. And so for me to get the eyes to see it, to really internalize what we're talking about was very critical to understanding an issue, because once you see something, you can't unsee it. It's such an immediate impact, and you don't have to like put that into long words. You don't have to show them numbers because they just see it, they feel it, they get it. So I needed to make it tangible, and that's really why I got behind using art for conservation or art for communications, because when you use the visual media, it's incredibly powerful at getting people to feel and care and love. And so that's really what I was trying to accomplish by using visual media.
What was your first campaign that you did?
The first campaign that I did was actually for the oil spill, and I'm actually going to try and pull this up. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, we'll give you a minute.
Yeah, I'm just trying to upload the hard drive. So yeah, I started working with raising awareness about the BP oil spill through visual imagery, and that was vastly popular, and it registered with a lot of people. It went viral. Within a week I got a call from BBC, so it was just a very quick translation and impact. So yeah, and I'll tell you, the other thing is also, I've been lucky too. Like, it's not just about being talented or being able to do the right thing at the right time and caring and being really passionate. It's also like the path of least resistance. Like, if you feel really pulled to something, the doors also just open up with it, because you don't hold yourself back. You don't fight the flow of that. And then also everybody facilitates it because they see your passion. So like, if you care and you move forward in that direction, people help you. Like, people help you get heard, get seen for what you do. So that's part of it too.
Well, and what is your favorite campaign that you've ever worked on?
I think my favorite campaign ever would be, I think the one that resonates most with people, I'm gonna pull it up right now, is this one, and it's focused on the ivory trade. And I think this was the image that basically kicked off my entire career, is because people saw it in Africa, and one woman called me from an organization in Uganda, and she's like, I'm looking at this artwork, it's on a child's computer in Uganda. Is this something that you made? And I was like, yeah, because I just put it up on Facebook. I had no idea how it was going to reach people. And then kids were making it their profile picture or their cover photo. So somebody from Uganda called me and they're like, is this your art? And she's like, if it is, then I need to give you another assignment. Like, I need a new campaign created for China. Will you work with us? And so like, that's how this whole thing got kickstarted for me, was through. And so I'm just going to share screen. Give me 1 second. And here we go.
Yes, if you'd just like to take us through a gallery of your work and tell us the stories about it, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. So you can all see my screen, yeah? Like, you can see my work? Okay, wicked. So yeah, so these are the two images that I created for the ivory trade and the rhino horn. And as you can see, It's a very flat image. It shows, you know, two-dimensionally what the issue is that we're killing animals from either species to take away just one part of the animal that we think is valuable. And it's honestly just bringing the eye to focus on the red, because I want to talk about it as blood ivory and the horn as blood horn. So just coloring it the right way had impact. The other thing I look at is when I create an image or a campaign like this, is to get it on all the magazines, on you know, channels that people will see it and then change how they buy, change how they show up to the marketplace the next day. So we ran my campaigns on magazines for yachting, for sports, for anything to do with high-end consumerism, so that people who could buy a Rolex watch are the ones who can also afford to buy Rhino horn and Ivory, and they would have a look at this campaign and register the issue at hand. Then we also—
Were the ads free, Asher?
Pardon?
Were the ads free?
So the ads were done in partnership with these different brands. Like, we basically procured ad spots through Wild Aid. The ad spots were donated to the nonprofit from billboard companies, from you know, people who had phone booths, bus ads, like anything to do with places where lots of eyes could look at something. Those spots were given to us to raise awareness for the issue. And so these two campaign images were also created for that reason. And the reason I made these two works look like sort of an anime style is because in China, like, this would be more familiar. You know, they would see this and it would be obvious to them, and it would feel like an extension of their own vocabulary visually. So always create something that looks close to what people are already used to seeing. Then it seems like second nature to get that message across to them. When I create a campaign, I always say, get the plot right, like get the story plot correct, by which I mean, like, define your problem, because if you ask the question in a very succinct, articulate way, the question has the answer within it. So always draft a very succinct question, and that will help you get to the solution. Then I always say, mind your language, because not every country speaks the same language as us, and not everyone has the same words for the same things. For instance, I was trying to run a campaign in East Africa about bushmeat. And bushmeat is basically any animal that's wild, that's killed for consumption, for food, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're talking about livestock in the United States, for instance, you're talking about cows, you're talking about sheep, chickens, things like that, poultry. So like, we have a understanding of wildlife and meat that's grown and eaten, right? So you don't confuse, you don't think you can make a lion burger, you have a cattle, like a cow burger. And we see that as two different things. But in East Africa, in Swahili, they have no word for bushmeat. They don't have a word for wildlife that is consumed against livestock that is okay to be consumed. They just see meat as meat. Anything that is moving can be killed and eaten, right? So then you can't go there and tell them, don't eat bushmeat. They're like, what does that even mean? Like, it's meat. Of course I can eat it, right? So you have to know what language you're speaking in. And if locally they have the word for the concept, for the idea that you're trying to communicate. So that's a very important thing to bear in mind. The other thing is to state what's obvious. Like, if you go into any room, you can never assume that everybody else in that room knows everything that you know and that they're on the same page as you. They're not. And oftentimes the thing that's most obvious is the thing that is not shared knowledge. For instance, we ran a campaign against Ivory in Times Square, and I did it on a billboard right above McDonald's on 44th Street, right? And we ran the campaign for a whole month, and the campaign said, Ivory lasts forever, so does extinction. Every tusk costs a life and destroys a family. Is it worth it? And the number one question we got from our surveys on the road, that when tourists saw the billboard and then, you know, they would fill a survey with us, the number one question we got is, what is Ivory? So we missed the mark on the opening statement of the campaign. People didn't even know what Ivory was. And here we're telling them, don't buy Ivory, and Ivory costs a life and destroys a family. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, what is Ivory? So always make sure that you say the most obvious thing and get everybody on the same page before you start telling them more information. Then finally, I would say embed emotional triggers, because we are feeling creatures. We're not reason driven, clearly seen by how the world works around you. people, when they feel it, it's intuitive to them. They can sense it within them in a way that is not necessarily rational, but feels instinctual, feels inherent to their fabric of being. And so they're more likely to take an action that's positive or impact driven if they feel about the issue more than they think about the issue. So I always embed emotional triggers within the landscape of the campaigns I create. The other things that I've done is like work with brands. So I worked with Brita, for instance, which is a filtering company in the West, particularly in the North American market. And so we have, Brita filters that can capture a footprint of 900 bottles with a single long lost filter. And so I created this installation in Canada in the Toronto Union Station out of 900 bottles in a sort of horseshoe arc, so that it looks like the Niagara Falls when you're walking through it, but it's like the amount of plastic that's consumed every 4 seconds in Toronto alone. So it's a way for a person walking through the exhibit to see the impact of plastic every 4 seconds within that city that they live in. And maybe that changes how you buy tomorrow, how you show up tomorrow. So, always give people the opportunity to see numbers or data in real time, because if they see it and they can feel it tangibly, they're more likely to change their consumer behavior. These are campaigns. These are actually two of my favorite campaigns, simply because it was based on a friend's scientific theory. His name is Brian Ham, and he's a primatologist. He works on studying animal behavior in gorillas and bonobo monkeys, bonobo apes, sorry. And so I had 6 different cats that I illustrated in the same style. And what I was trying to accomplish through that was to use human eye proportions within the cat's eye. So this is not actually a cat's eye if you look closely. That's not what a lion's eye looks like, but people don't intuitively know that. When they saw the campaign, they just thought it was mesmerizing, and they were like, oh, there's such beautiful cats, like I'm so haunted by them. But the reason I'm haunted by them is because we connect intuitively and instinctively to animals that have the same pupil proportions as we do. And so what I did was to recreate the cats with human eye proportions. So you connect more instinctively with them. So it's just tricking people to care about an animal they otherwise don't care as much about, because a cat's eye is usually more triangular, and therefore we don't instinctively connect to them, and we see them as predatory species that are different from us, instead of feeling like they're more of our own kind. So this is one way to trick people.
Asher, before you move on, can you talk about the story that is in your video about the tent experience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
I'd love to hear it.
I've had a lot of really funny, weird things happen to me out while I was camping or living in the bush wild, or even diving in the oceans. So two things. So I'll start with the funnier story, and then I'll tell you the lion tent story. So the first one is that I have been shit on by 3 different species. One is a blue whale. I got crapped on by a blue whale while I was diving in Sri Lanka, and blue whale poop is neon orange because they eat krill. So I got literally dung bombed by a blue whale while I was diving in the open water with a research team. I also got shit on by an elephant. That was also in the ocean. It was in the Andaman Islands. There was the only living elephant that could swim in the ocean. And so we were allowed to go diving with this elephant. And then while it was diving, it took a poop, and I was right under it trying to get a photograph. So I got pooped on by an elephant. I also got pooped on by a dolphin in Hawaii, because I was tracking the coral reef, and there was like a baby dolphin that came up and was playing with milk rings. They were blowing bubble rings at me with the mother's milk. And it was so cute. So I started following the dolphin and its mother. And so then the pod came, joined the mother and the baby, and flanked the dolphin. And then we were all swimming together offshore and swimming, together as a pod. And I was swimming fast and keeping up with them because I didn't want to lose sight of the dolphins. And then one dolphin kept pulling away, and I was like, oh, why is he pulling away? What's he going to do? He was trying to take a poop in private, but I invaded him and moved behind him, followed him, and then he pooped right in my face. So that was 3 different animals that have pooped on me. And
there's a lesson here.
Yeah, there's a lesson. Don't follow them if they're trying to go away from you, because they just want a moment of privacy, And then, so with the lion story, I was actually out camping in Barafu in the Serengeti, and I'd gone with an entire research team. We had all set up camp. Everybody pitched their own tents. I was an amateur nest builder. And so my tent turned out to have insufficient pull, so it wouldn't stay up. So somebody else from the outside took the inside tent, which was pitched in the middle of the campsite. And I had to take the tent on the outside because it had all the poles and it was staying up. So I was like, okay, I'll take the better tent, but it was like kind of outside of the camp. So during the evening, we're all making, we're roasting our vegetables and meat on the fireplace. Like we created a fire out there and a bonfire, and we were cooking all our food in aluminum foil. And I was like, oh, I really need to go to the bathroom. I mean, all my stories involve going to the bathroom. So I was like, where's the toilet? Like, what area are we assigning as going to the bathroom? Like, that's the safe zone to go to the loo. And so, the head of the research team was like shining the flashlight, and he was like, oh, we should go right in front of the car so then you have privacy and no one can see you. So go in front of the cars. But as he was flashing the flashlight to show that, you should go in front of the cars, it picked up on two green lights looking back at us, right? So then I was like, I shined my flashlight there, and I was like, there's something there looking at us. It's like 2 green eyes staring. And then we look, pan and scan with a flashlight, and there's 6 green eyes staring at us. And it's literally 15 feet away from us, and there's 6 green eyes crouched. And then we're like, what is that? And then we realize it's 6 lionesses that are trying to hunt us, right? We're on the dinner menu. We didn't have a gun. We didn't have any way to protect the camp, okay? So then the head of the research department was like, okay, we should like take the car and move the cats away from the campsite. I mean, I don't know if you've heard the saying about herding cats. You can't actually herd cats, but like we tried for like an hour. All we did was give them a cardio workout. We made them hungrier than they were when they first came to hunt us. So we took them for a run. We came back. We thought we'd like lost them, but they followed the cars back. So then we had to take them further away. And then we finally came back to the campsite. And I was like, okay, so maybe they haven't followed us this time around. I don't know. We just assumed they hadn't followed us back. So then we all ate our dinner and went to bed in our respective tents. And then I wake up at like 1:30 in the morning, and my heart's like pounding, right? And I was like, I couldn't breathe, and I was sweating, and it was really hot. And I was like, okay, what is happening? Like maybe I got bit by a snake. So I'm checking for all the symptoms. Like, is it a scorpion sting? Like, what is happening to my body? What are the symptoms? And how can I medicate, or how can I address the situation medically? And so I was going through the motions, thinking about everything. And then I was like, okay, what time is it? Because I need to document the time in case it's poison. So I look at the phone, and it's like 1:29 or 1:30 in the morning, and the phone, like cell phone light, like lights up the tent, right? And that's when I see there's like a whiplash of a lion's tail on top of my tent. And then I see something is smelling me through the tent fabric, because my head was like, I'm tall, so I was taller than my tent. So my head was kind of protruding through the fabric, and something was like smelling me and like nuzzling into my head from the top of the tent. And I was like, oh my God, something is like breathing me in. And then I heard that like lion's guttural sound, when it like breathes you in. And I was like, oh my God, it's like a lion. It's outside my tent, and it's smelling me through the tent. It's going to eat me. And I remember having a full panic attack. I was like, what do I do? Like, I don't have a gun. I can't defend myself. Like, I'm just going to get eaten tonight. So then I shrink into my sleeping bag, and I can see myself like smelling up a storm, because when you're sweating that much because you're that scared, you smell like a Christmas lamb, or like a turkey that's stewing in its own juices and cooking itself in its own heat. So I was like, oh my God, like they can smell me even more now. They know I'm in here. And then I was like, okay, maybe I should like check how many lions are outside. Like, did all 6 of them come back? So then I put my hand on the back flap of the tent to like zip the back to see outside, to see how many lions there are. And that tent flap was like breathing. So there was a lion like leaning against my tent, and there was one sniffing me through the tent. So I was like, oh my God, like I'm going to die tonight. And I realized like the only thing I could do in that moment is to like sync up my breath, because I knew like if you breathe really rapidly, then your pheromone output is putting out that you're prey species, that you're breathing and having a heart rate that signifies that you're behaving like prey, right? Because predators would have a different rate than a prey species would. And I was like, okay, you're behaving like prey. You need to change your biorhythm. And so I was like, the only thing I can do is try to sync up my breath with the lion's breath and breathe when the lion is breathing. So when the lion inhaled, I inhaled. When it exhaled, I exhaled. And I was doing that for like an hour and a half or something. And I became like in a meditative state. Like I just reached my own little bliss zone. doing deep breathing with a lion outside. And I remember around 3 o'clock, I heard like hyenas, and then there was like a lot of commotion and a lot of noise outside. And I don't know what happened until the morning when I woke up. So at 6 a.m. we all got up and I heard the rest of the camp rouse. So I was like, okay, it's daylight. We're numbers together again. So it'll seem safe to come out. So I come out and I remember seeing like 2 wildebeests completely chewed apart. Like there was like intestines and like, internal organs like everywhere. There was just blood everywhere. So that would have been me. Like the lions and hyenas went after 2 wildebeest instead of me, but like there was 2 carcasses right behind my tent. So they had gotten distracted by 2 prey species instead of me. And thank God I learned how to breathe with lions. But that was just like a lucky opportunity. But also the cool thing about the lions in Tanzania is that they're not as familiar with tents. In Kenya, they're more likely to rip a tent and eat a person. But in Tanzania, they're like, oh, this is just like a human smelling rock that's made out of fabric. We don't know what to do with it. So usually they just sit on it, or like literally the lion researcher had 6 lions sleeping on her after collapsing the tent on her, and they didn't do anything to her,
Wow.
So he survived the night as well. So like, I was like, so people tell you stories and you're like, okay, well, okay. If you survived, I survived, like it's possible to get out of these like pickles. But yeah, things do happen when you're out in the wild. And like, especially when you're with the research team, we're not really equipped to handle survival challenges. We're not Bear Grylls, and we don't really have the wherewithal to manage on the fly.
Well, Asher, I think we've got that's like one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard, for sure. Yeah, but yeah, I think we have some more questions coming in, but I can no longer see them on my because of the screen in front of me. Do you want to take a look?
Yeah,
I think
sure. Absolutely. Okay, so here we are. So were the ads free? Yeah, I answered that. Have you ever worked on anything to do with climate change? Yes, I've done extensive work on climate change. Here's an image I'm going to share with you. That's of the polar bear and its mother. And I actually used waste fabric from one of the 7th Avenue, like when I was working in fashion, from one of the projects that we worked on. So anything that was wasted from the fashion industry, I used to create art about wildlife. There's another.
How big is it? Was it made of cloth?
Yeah, it's made out of cloth. It's made out of bits of fabric, and it's about 36 inches by like 48 inches.
That's so powerful.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. And here, let me see if I can find another image for climate change as well. May not be in this archive here. Yeah, but if you go to my website, it's AsherJay.com, AsherJay.com, and that has like all of my artwork and campaigns, and you can see my climate change works in there. This image is the one that I created. This is the first work I created ever for political campaigning against conservation concerns. In favor of conservation concerns, I mean. And so I created this image that shows humanity evolving into the Grim Reaper, and he's actually holding the oil pipeline, and he's pumping life with death. And that's what we're becoming in the process of fueling climate change forward. So it's like getting people to understand that that's what you mean when you say the word fossil fuel. Like if you see this image, you see it sooner than you would if I were to sit and explain fossil fuels to you. That's what I was trying to accomplish. So another question. Oh yeah. Sorry. So yeah, then the other question I got is, have you ever gone into a jungle and seen animals in person? Yeah, I've gone into different ecosystems around the world. The most incredible magical life experience I had was walking in the jungles in Guatemala in Coxcomb Basin one night with a ranger, and there was a jaguar like we were tracking a jaguar. We saw its scat, which is its poop. We saw its pug marks, like the footprints, and we were tracking it, but it was tracking us too. And it took us a while to realize something was moving next to us in the bushes with us at night. And then we could feel the growl of the jaguar, and the sound of a jaguar like vibrates through every cell in your body. It's the most amazing sound you've ever heard. So yeah, so I've definitely had some incredible life experiences from being out in nature and being with wildlife, for sure.
Well, I'd love to ask you about the National Geographic Explorer phase of your life. How did that all come about, and what does that mean and involve for you?
Yeah, so I was so, I mean, this is the other thing I'll tell you. I have wanted to be a part of National Geographic since I was a little kid, right? And when I started creating these campaigns and these images, I actually sent like printouts of my art with a letter to National Geographic saying, hey, listen, I do this kind of work. I think your magazine should use my work and go in this direction and use art in a new way to tell the stories that matter in our world. And they wrote me back a letter saying, the only time we use art is to illustrate dinosaurs and cavemen, and we don't need your work, right? And I was so heartbroken. I was like, what? Like, I thought I was doing something amazing and I was going to help the environment, and National Geographic was going to get on board, and they didn't. And like 4 years later, I had done the Ivory campaigns, which I showed you, right? These images, and I did the billboard in Times Square, which was another animation I ran. And like then people, it became all these movements. Like people started printing my posters, people started making tattoos on their bodies out of my artwork, and it became this global movement. And then National Geographic called me, and I thought it was a scam call. They called me and they're like, no, we're going to give you an award and make you part of the family because it's amazing what you're doing with your art. So like, all I'll say is, you know, the same people who reject you and say that what you're doing is not something that they care about or what can use, years from then, they might come back and be like, you know, what you're doing is amazing. We're completely behind you. Let's support you and get you on board. So like, you might be too soon. You might be ahead of the curve. So never think that what you're doing is not the right thing. Just follow your heart and your passion and stand up for what you believe in, because at the end of it, you're still contributing in a way that no one else can, and they might just not see it yet. So I've always had a huge laugh about the fact that a lot of things that I went after that didn't come for me came around later. And I was like, oh, well, okay, you know, I was just ahead of the curve for the party. That's one thing. You've done amazing work with animals and the environment. Are you planning to bring awareness to human exploitation and poverty as well? So actually right now, I'm not working as much with campaigning or images. I'm working more on tech entrepreneurship. So I am now the CEO of a company that I'm starting. It's getting incorporated this week. And I do have a lot of men working for me, and all the men are actually scared of me because apparently I am a handful and I work like at an accelerated rate. So I'm super, super focused when I get behind something. And I'll tell you this too, okay? Like, because I didn't have an economics, finance, and business background, right? But you can learn those things in your own time. Like one of the greatest skill sets a young girl can have is learning money and numbers. Like learn how the financial markets operate, learn how bank accounts work, learn how transactions happen, learn why cryptocurrencies are so huge, learn why money is traded the way it is, how money works, the fiction of money, how it works, learn how the models of different economic models work, you know, from like donut economics, which is more regenerative, to traditional economics, which is Adam Smith, which is more degenerative, and why we need to veer away from the old system into the new systems. These things like equip you to be far more present in a larger context outside just caring about things, that I can actually get behind creating movements or showing up with initiative that can actually change the paradigm within which you're trying to change narratives, right? So like the whole system might need to change, not just a part of it. So if that's the case, then you need to be informed of every aspect of it. So don't, just because you have not studied politics doesn't mean you can't read up on it and know more now. If you haven't read economics before doesn't mean you can't read up and, you know more about it now. So I always encourage people to like apply themselves and learn as much as possible in as many fields as possible, just because it's a very interdisciplinary approach that I embody and imbibe toward anything I take on. So even though I was doing exploration through creative media, mass media communications before, now I'm using technology and tech entrepreneurship for the same purpose, right?
So your tech company is going to be all about conservation?
Yeah, it's going to be focused on conservation. It's going to focus on humanity as well. So it'll be on sustainable development, infrastructure growth, and social development as well. And I'm still going to tap into communications, but it'll be more from a tech perspective. So like, I'm just encouraging girls to think big and go after anything you want, because sky is the limit. I've never veered away from doing something that I felt called to doing. It's amazing how many people support you. Like all the investors are men right now, and they all like are so juiced up about what I'm capable of doing. And that just comes from you caring about what you care about and not taking no for an answer. Don't ever like, the one thing I'd say is like, be very confident in your expertise and do all the research to know your material so that when you show up to the table, that you can talk loudly and proudly. Like, I am very, very vocal. No man can get me to shut up. Like, no one's going to silence my voice. Okay. So like, make sure your voice is loud and proud, because you have something to say and you're worth being heard. So I never apologize for my voice at any table. I always speak up. Always put your hand up, always raise that question, always call people out, always be forthcoming about what you are experiencing within you about a context, because you might see something that everybody else is missing. And you'll be shocked how little some people know. They act like they know everything, but they actually don't know some big things, okay? And so then I'll be like, has this been addressed yet? And in the beginning, I was like tiptoeing around like the stocks and the way the equity was being issued and things like that. And then over time, I was like, this makes no sense. And they're like, you're right, it makes no sense. Nobody knew what was going on. It wasn't just me. And I was the one who called out the elephant in the room. So like, no matter what you think is going on, if you think something doesn't add up, be the person who calls that thing out. Because you'll be surprised, like more people in that room may not know what is going on, you know, and no one has flagged it. Mom and 9-year-old daughter in New York. Thank you, Asher. It's so interesting to hear this informal discussion. Oh, absolutely. I'm glad to be doing this. Is there any other questions? Happy to like take on anything else that you guys
Yes, we have time for one more question from anybody. I think, Sophia, you wanted to know what it took to get a degree at Parsons. I think you had a question earlier. What was that exactly?
Yes, it was just, I think the idea of design thinking is so cool. And I see, you know, people incorporating it at Stanford. They have a school of design as well. And I think some of us are not artistic at all, but I love the idea of, you know, form and function, and not art just for art's sake, but more practicality and doing something bigger. So, what does it take to get into Parsons? Do you have to have the ability to draw, or can it now be done with computers, or, you know?
I would say, you know, the beautiful thing about today's generation, you can go to lynda.com, you can go to like Masterclass. There's so many resources available where you don't even have to be in a school or university to learn everything that you need to learn. Like, I take courses in everything from political campaigning to, you know, learning about string theory, because everything is connected. We're in one interdisciplinary integrated world. So never shy away from learning. Like, it is such a magical place. There's so much to know and so much to like participate in. The more you take on, the more you're going to expand your own understanding and experience of the world around you. And the other thing, that the reason why I care about the natural world so much is because for me, it's irreplaceable magic. I moved recently from Manhattan, New York, after being there for 18 years to Montana. And I live like off-grid with a septic tank in rural Montana now. Okay, it's like a very different life. Like, I have bears in my backyard, and like some days I get mountain lion warnings for my like deck. Like, they like, don't go out because, you know, don't let your dog out because it might get eaten by a mountain lion, which is amazing to me. I have no street lights. Like, from living in Manhattan where it was nothing but light pollution, I'm now, and I was living right next to Times Square too for the longest while. So you can imagine right now I have like dark sky country. I can see the Milky Way outside my deck every evening. So I think, like, you know, when you're able to transition and push yourself and challenge yourself, even if other people think that, oh, you're a city girl, like, people always tell you who you are, only you know who you are, and always push the boundaries to like challenge yourself in the next area in life, right? If people tell you you're a city girl, go live in the country for a while and learn what it means to be in the country. If you're in the country for a while, go and live in a big city for a bit. Like, learn and experience and be everywhere and do everything, because you get one shot at life and it goes by so fast. Like, don't hold yourself back from being a part of it, you know, and like really doing the best you can of everything that you're able to offer. Like, put it all out there. Like, it's such a gift to be alive. So I really value the magic of everyday moments. And like, my greatest gift is that I have 3 deer that like to eat and sleep in my lawn every night. And so for me, like, I love that animals are so magical and they're so spontaneous and they're so present and they're with you when they're with you. They're there one minute and gone the next, right? And that's something that I want to protect for the next generation to experience. Yeah. So that's also why I do what I do with so much passion, is because I care to leave that legacy behind.
After this has just, I'm so sorry. I'm going to wrap this up because our programs are an hour long, so we just are barely taking it out. But this, you have just given our audience some of the truly most inspiring words. I just can't imagine that everybody's not going to just run out there and change how they do everything after witnessing your life, which is just remarkable. It truly is.
You know, you're never too young to start something. You want to start a company tomorrow, start a company tomorrow. You want to change the world tomorrow, today, now, do it. Like, there's nothing stopping you from making that impact. Absolutely nothing. I know kids who are like 11 years old who have started their own nonprofit. I know kids who are like 6 years old who have started some local movement or initiative in their backyard. Like, you're never too young to do something. Just like go out there and start doing things that you want to do. Like, you don't need to wait to graduate to make impact.
Yeah.
And once I launch my application, you'll be able to do a lot more on that to make impact.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you, Asher, again, so much for that. I'm going to turn things over to Michelle, Dr. Michelle Krause, who is one of our board members, and she likes to wrap up our program, or we like Michelle to wrap up our program in a few words. So, Michelle, I'm going to turn things over to you, and then we will adjourn.
All right, Asher, thank you so much. You have been an experience for these young adults, and that says a great deal because you truly are an experience to be cherished and honored and feel very special. So I hope that I mirror the feelings of the group, because I know I feel as special as Lori does of having this experience. And maybe Sophia, who knows? But in any event, we are bringing these experiences to young adults, primarily girls, women, that are seeking new ways of living in this world, of reaching for the big balloons that they can't quite reach, and finding new role models. So the reason they make me close is I always have to ask for the money that drives the world and as it goes around. So if you feel very special about what you've seen or experienced, and if you feel like giving us a little bit of money, I always say, give us a couple of shekels. This money will be used for more programs, more role models, more exciting endeavors that should open the horizon of what's possible to you. Nothing is too small and nothing is too big. So we wish you be safe in this pandemic, and that you go online and you watch a good deal of our videos, because they'll keep you safe, they'll show you the world, and it'll keep you out of trouble between you and me. So thank you very much. And Asher, again, thank you.
Of course, real pleasure. Thank you guys for having me. And if any of you kids want any advice or connections or help in any regard, feel free to email me. I put my email in the chat box. Happy to, facilitate anything I can for you all.
I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to specifically call out our two other board members that joined us as well. Amanda Guo, CPA, if anybody needs any accounting, she is so amazing. And Emily Wu, our other board member who has contributed to so many organizations over the years as head of development, but also as a board member. And if any parents on the call are really excited, we are definitely open to other people joining the board. We're also specifically looking for a teacher of 3rd to 8th graders who might have 3rd to 8th graders, him or herself, so that they can also pull in other watchers. And any of you from any of the tech companies in Silicon Valley or any big companies, there's often a one-to-one match from your company. I know specifically for Apple, they'll match up to $10,000, and Facebook, Google, Facebook has free ads. We would love to use free ads to promote SheHeroes to other people. And everybody, if you gave us 1 share of your company, that would be huge. And I'm pretty sure anybody who works at any company has at least 1 share. So thank you for listening, young ones. Tell everybody you know. And for the adults that brought their young ones, thank you. And thank you, Lori. You're amazing. So proud of our executive director. Thank you, Asher. You are just, wow, everything that comes out of your mouth, inspiring. And all of you now have her contact. So I say, don't be afraid to hit her up.
And don't get caught with the lions.
Yeah.
That was so scary. I'm so
Don't
glad
get
you're
caught with
alive.
the
I'm
lions.
so
Don't
glad.
go
Well, you
out
obviously
there.
made it.
Yeah, please. Be
Okay.
careful. Lions are bigger than you are.
I have really good stories about sharks too. So, shoot me an email and keep in touch.
That might be our
You
follow-up.
would
We
be
might
my
need
nightmare
follow-up.
if I was a little girl.
Okay, and on that note, we will wrap things up for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you again, Asher. Thank you again to our board. Thank you again to all the young people that have watched this, and we will see you the next time. So take care and stay safe. Bye for now.